Hello, beautiful souls. And now that I have you captive, I'm going to talk to you about something that I know a lot about: prison. Did you know that the Washington Post says that in the entire global population of the world today, the United States only has 5%. And yet, when you take the entire global population of prisoners, the United States houses 25% of that total in the U.S. So what does that mean to you, and why am I sharing this with you? Because according to the Washington Post again, 1 out of 20 of you will end up in prison in your lifetime. So take a look around you and figure out who's going to go. So I am going to share with you why I know so much about prison and my own self-imprisonment. You see, when I was 11 years old, I had an overnight transformational experience. I invited love in my heart in a very abusive childhood. And when I invited love, when I woke up the next morning, every single thing about me was different. The way that I looked at things, the music that I liked, the colors that I liked, the friends that I liked, everything about me had shifted, and I didn't really understand it. But because of this awakening and because of this ability to have meaningful, real-time conversations with the non-physical, with God, the spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it, I started looking for ways to find connection, because as you awaken, as you have some of these awakening experiences and you do your own spiritual growth, you will too find that need for connection and to be loved, because it's innately in us to love and to be loved. And I say constantly to sit around the campfire and sing Kumbaya and sit on each other's laps, and why aren't we doing it? So I went through this process when I was a child of looking for my parents to love. But you see, my parents played this perfect role of not really loving me to the depth and the degree that I understood that I personally would need. And so I was on this conquest, and in this conquest, I started looking at what other people said that I needed to be. They were, through their own filter system, barely seeing life through a clear lens, and I, as an innocent, childlike being who just wanted to love, was wanting to get acceptance, was wanting to be touched, was wanting to feel the presence of love within them. So I conformed. And I got myself into this really smaller and smaller and smaller box. As I aged, I met people who took advantage, who saw me, but I didn't see myself. And so I did what they said, and I put shackles around my ankles. And then I found out later in life that I'm really shackled, and I'm in this little bitty small box, and I don't like the confinement of this box, but I don't know how to come out. And so I turned to self-loathing. If you don't know what self-loathing is, it is self-hatred. And it's the worst thing that I know that a human being can possibly go through, is to question every single thing about you. Because you see, when I'm trying to fit in, I'm listening to what others tell me and not my own inner guidance system, not my genius inside of me that every single one of you have. And so I find myself questioning everything. I'd made some really unbelievable decisions. I had been in 4 different marriages. I was homeless at one point because I trusted what another man said about making an investment. And so how this translates is that through abuse, through being used, through all of these things that I went through, and then finding myself in this really small box in prison, I actually wanted to go inside a prison, and I did it. So I met this woman in 2012, and because of the transformational work, by telling her something that happened to her at 14, how many times it happened, what the perpetrator looked like. And she had never told a soul. And as an intuitive, I'm able to give that information to help people to get free. She got free. And when she did, she said, I want to hire you for my brother, but there's extenuating circumstances. He's in federal prison on a 50-year sentence. Can you do this work? And I said, Spirit's not limited to time and space, so it doesn't really matter. I ended up going into the prison system as a visitor for 5 years. And let me tell you what I saw. This is really a fascinating thing, because at the age of 11, when that transformation happened to me, I started studying human behavior, psychology, mindset. I started looking at how everybody functioned, and at the age of 13, I was telling God, look, if this is all you got, if this is how we treat each other, let me go now. I don't like this reality. But I stayed. So I find myself in my late 40s in this prison system, and I'm watching people, and I'm reading them, and I'm seeing what they're doing, and they're doing the same things that I was doing. And I saw the laws of attraction so blatantly before me. And guys, some of these people were not even guilty. Didn't matter if you were guilty. There was an energy and a mindset and a victimization. And I met surgeons. I met CPAs. I met all kinds of people, airline pilots. I even hugged and got to know John Gotti's right-hand man, named Davini, of course. And I loved him. And I loved all the people that I met. And I started to notice that within the guards, within the people the regular staff that worked in the prisons, within the people that stood outside with me, waiting to go into that confinement, I started to see the commonalities. I started to see that all of us have our self-imposed prison and confined boxes, and I started to feel mine in a way that was so palatable that I had to get out. And as a matter of fact, every single day when I walked out of that prison, and I felt as an empath, feeling that heaviness amongst everybody that was there, and then walking outside that gate with the 3 rows of barbed wire and the process of getting in and out of prison. And I would breathe, and I would cry, and I would feel the sensation of freedom, that I could move, that I'm not being watched anymore, that I'm not in their box. And I would get in my car sometimes, and I would cry. And I would say, what is my prison? What did I come into the prison system to help this man transform his life? He had only served 24 years of prison. He still had much to go. And yet, through me teaching him the spiritual laws and the spiritual principles and doing my own work, this man got out of prison years before he was supposed to, just by using the spiritual laws. Spirit rules matter. So then I started looking at myself, and I'm talking about this, and I go into the prison, and this guy was highly intelligent, and he remembered the content from the more than 1,000 spiritual books that he had read. And he explained to me one day this story that I'm going to share with you. There was a very overweight, obese man in a village, true story, and he ended up one day, through his spiritual journey and getting through the confinement, he started to understand that he didn't need to be confined in a certain way, and he started ripping off his clothes. And he's sitting in the village, and he's naked. And the villagers don't like it. So they come to him, and they are fighting, and they're complaining, and they're saying, get your clothes on. He won't do it. So they put him in jail. And he goes into the jail, and they shut the door, lock it, turn the key. And because of him knowing that spirit rules matter, 3 minutes later, he's on top of the thatched roof, dying laughing, naked. And then the villagers put him in there again. This time, they put shackles around his ankles. They closed the door, they took the key, they took it out, and they're watching him. And 3 minutes later, he is back on the thatched roof, dying laughing, naked. Why can't we just be happy? So they put him back in there one more time. And this time they said, we're going to shackle you. Every time they closed him, by the way, so the clothes would just drop. They put the clothes on him. They put 2 guards right beside him, shut the door, took the key. Guess what? 3 minutes later, the clothes are dropped, the shackles are dropped. He's up on the roof, dying laughing, naked. And so they decided that's not going to work. Well, there was one villager that decided, I hate this about you. I want you to conform. And so he came to him with poison. And the very spiritual man knew, this is poison that you are giving me, but I am going to drink it because I'm going to show you something. So he drank the poison, no reaction. And then he says to the man, I love you, and now I'm going to let you experience the poison that you fed me. You see, love transforms anything. So all of a sudden, the man starts gagging. Blood is coming out of his throat. He's dying. And the spiritual man says, that's enough. You learned your lesson. You can live, but live differently. What I learned by that story and by sitting in prison and looking at the blatancy of what our mind does and how we try to conform and what kind of scenarios and really ridiculous decisions we make that are so dramatic that cause us to go through pain is that you, one, are so much more than your story. Your story is just your identity, and it's a fake one. It's not your whole story. It's just a part of your story. So what if you've been rained on? We came here to experience the dichotomies. 2, there is not a client that I've worked with or a person that I've met that does not have the power and the strength and the oomph to overcome anything that they have been through. And then 3, you are actually the one that put yourself in the self-imposed prison. So therefore, stop waiting on somebody else to give you the key. You have the key. So let's just consider this for a minute. Where is the key to your confinement, your not coming out of hiding, not letting yourself be free? Where is your freedom? It's probably in a memory or a thought or maybe a piece of jewelry that somebody gave you that just, it was painful. It could be like my mother who said to me at 42 years old, when I called to wish her a happy Mother's Day, you're thinking it's a happy occasion, and she says, you have screwed up your entire life. And I said, I'm 42. How could I screw up my entire life when I've only lived 42 years? I said, I'm going to go now. And I hung up and I started smiling. And I said, wow, that's her mindset. You see, I'd already worked myself to freedom by getting the divorce. And now my mother's upset that I'm free. Conform. You have the key to let yourself out of your own prison. So I want you to close your eyes for just a moment and think about the confinement that you have put yourself into and whatever self-imposed prison you have yourself in. And think about that moment and forgive the people that are involved in it because actually they're your instigators on your spiritual journey and in your curriculum. Forgive them, forgive yourself, and then you'll start to feel this sensation that's kind of uncomfortable underneath your seat. You're sitting on something. And what that is the key. So take the key wherever it is and consider coming out and joining some of us who have actually set ourselves free. I'm waiting on you. And so is the inmate, and so is this really overweight spiritual man. We know what it's like to be free. Take your key, put it in the door, and let yourself out. We welcome you with open arms. Will you give yourself permission to rise?